Welcome back to today's coding tutorial. We're going to make another game. So the very first thing that you want to do is click that link that is below the video. That will open this project and take you into outer space. You need to be sure you press remix. If this button does not show up, that's because you have not signed in with your Scratch account. So be sure you are signed in so that you can remix this project. So I'll take you on a quick tour of the game. You are in charge of the spaceship and he will follow your mouse. And you are basically trying to dodge this alien, which is really an octopus, but it's a scary alien octopus, okay? So, and these stars that will show up, that is alien food, and the alien is going to eat those and get bigger and faster unless you can run over them first. So your mission is to stay away from that alien, and, uh-oh, he got one, and because every time he gets to eat some food, he gets a little faster, and he gets a little bigger and it makes it harder to stay away from him. Now you'll notice that he has kind of two minds, that he will sometimes follow you and he will be pink or red and angry. When he turns yellow, that's because he decided to go eat the star. And so he is a pretty smart dude. You just have to watch out for him and make sure that you keep dodging him. So this is the type of game where there is no winning. Like you just play until you get eaten by the alien. So there is no winning, you just want to see how long you can survive. And to do that, what we want is a timer. We want a timer like a stopwatch to say, hey, you lasted 37 seconds or whatever. So let's set up a ticking timer like a stopwatch for your game. The very first thing that you want to do is you want to be sure that you are in the brain of the spaceship. So down here towards the bottom, if you click the sprite for the spaceship, now once you get into the spaceship's brain, it's kind of scary in there because there's a lot of code going around. But if you kind of scroll to the left and towards the top, you will see two pieces that are kind of blank and need you to add code to them. We will start with this one right here that says, when I receive start game, and it has a little comment that says add code here for the timer. Now a timer is almost like a scoreboard and we need something to help us remember how much time has passed. So anytime you need to remember anything, your best friend will be a variable. So you're going to remember something that can change. What we want to do now is click on variables and click make a new variable. And so this is literally like another spot in your brain to remember another number. So let's just call this time. And say okay. Now you'll notice you have a little spot here called time. There's a 0 in there right now, which is beautiful. I will say this, at the very beginning of the game, you want to be sure that you set that time to be 0. So again, set will erase whatever's in there. So whatever you had in there at the end of the last game, you lasted 3,700 seconds. You want to say take that out and just put a 0 in there instead. Then what we want to do, after we set it to 0 in the beginning, then we want to start using this change block. And we want to, every time, we want to change the time by 1, so it'll add 1 to it. Now, if this is all that we have, the set and the change, that is a really terrible timer, because when I hit start, it went to 0, and then it changed by 1. We added 1 to it, right? That's kind of lame. We are going to use code that will cause this change to happen over and over and over again. So let's head to control and our favorite friend here that looks like a dinosaur. We're going to put him here and we are going to feed him this change time. So it starts at 0. That only happens one time. And then over and over and over again, I add 1, I add 1, I add 1. And now watch how crazy this looks. That is a timer, right? It's counting up, but it's not counting as seconds or minutes or hours. Those are just random numbers and they're going really, really fast. So if you want to have like a real time, almost like more of a stopwatch, I would say combine that with a wait block. So I'm going to pick up this wait block. Now it's very important that you put this in exactly the right spot, right? So I want to feed this to the dinosaur and I want to feed it to him on top of the change. Because watch this, remember your computer just steps through these in the order that you put them in and follows the instructions. So your computer will say, okay, the time is 0, 0 seconds have passed because the game just started. Then it will come here, it will wait, and then that will become 1. And then come back around, it'll wait before it becomes 2. And so that will just keep going for all time. But now look at how beautiful that timer is. So pause real quickly and take a second to be sure that your code looks like this. If you wanted to be extra fancy, these two numbers don't have to be 1 and they don't have to be whole numbers. So you could say wait half a second, but then I would say that if I wait half a second, I only want to add 0.5 to my timer. So it just depends on what you want, and you can play with those numbers or play with that timer to customize it the way that you want it. And the only thing is it's counting forever, and that timer just keeps going. And then notice when I run into the octopus or the alien, that timer just keeps counting. And so that timer doesn't really keep track of how long I survived, it just counts forever. And I do not love a forever loop because I very rarely want to play a game forever. I really want that timer to count and then eventually stop, and I want it to stop when I got eaten by the alien. The forever loop is not my friend. There are other kind of loops or repetition blocks here. This repeat 10 times block will not help me because I don't know what number to put in here. I don't know how many times the timer should tick because it's not set in stone. It's going to depend on what happens in the game. Of course, I don't like the forever loop. I really like this option. So let's pull a little switcheroo. I'm going to grab the meat out of that sandwich and drag it over here. I'm going to grab that hamburger bun and throw it in the trash. I'm going to put this new hamburger bun here, and I'm going to put the hamburger back in it. So here we go. Now I have something that will repeat until it is time to stop, and think about that as your stop sign. When is it time to stop counting the timer? Well, it is time to stop when I am touching the alien. So pause real quickly, make sure that you have made that switch and that your code looks like this. And now let's try that out. Always test your game to make sure it works when you make a change. So that timer, mine is ticking by the seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. Now watch this, I'm gonna come up here to this timer and I'm gonna get hit. And notice that time stopped moving. Now the whole rest of the game is a mess and doesn't understand it's time to stop, but that timer knows that it stopped when I got hit by the alien, and that is awesome. And one other thing that I love about a repeat until block is eventually this loop will stop and then something happens when it's done. And you have a little place to attach code down here. So let's be fancy and let's say once it's all done, I want to switch my backdrop. I will connect that there. And stars, I should have named that like losing screen, but stars is the one that we want. It's a different backdrop than the space here. So again, keep counting, keep counting, keep counting. When you touch the alien, stop that repeating and come down here and switch to stars. And if you want to be extra fancy, let's be extra fancy. In my blocks, I put a block, I created a block for you named Crash. All Crash does is it makes the rocket shrink and look like it kind of disappearing. So here we go. Pause real quickly. Be sure that you have those additions in your code. And then let's test out your game. Make sure you test and see that your game works appropriately. Here I am, the timer is working. It's working. And beautiful, that timer stopped. I had a little animation and I switched to a different backdrop. Let's add one more fancy touch to the end of the game. Now what I want you to do is we're gonna go into the brain of the alien. So let's go over here and click on the alien. Now inside this alien, there's a lot of code. And so he's got a lot of stuff going on in his brain. What you are looking for is kind of over to the left and down. You will see some code that's just begging for you to attach code blocks to it. So you will find when the backdrop switches to stars, which basically means when the game is over. Let's do this. Let's add on a little message at the end. We will have the octopus have a word bubble that will speak to us, or the alien, sorry, he's an alien, and he will speak to us with a word bubble. What I would like for him to do is tell me, like, you only lasted so many seconds. Now, the weird thing about this is I can go to my variables and say, okay, go grab whatever number is in that kind of bucket right now, grab that number and say it. But now if I do that, it's kind of ugly because he just says 2, right? That's not great communication. let's teach him to speak in an entire sentence, right? So what I want to do is I want to put some words with that number, right? But when I put that in there, it takes up all the space and I can't put any words with it. So we are going to go to the green operators, and over here there is a block named join, and join is literally just like super glue. It glues two words together and builds a sentence. So this would be a really stupid word because it would say apple banana. It glues those two words together. So what I want to do is I want to put time in one of those spots. That would say apple and whatever number's in there. But I don't really want it to say apple. I want it to say you only lasted space. Don't forget that space. Now I'm just going to double click this to show it. Boop. You only lasted 2. But now here's the kind of tricky part. I would love to put the word seconds after that, right? So this glued together, you only lasted, and the number. This gets a little tricky. I'm going to join my join with another join. Oof, that's a lot of joining. But if I pick up this join and put it in the apple spot, so you only lasted 2, and then here, space, don't forget the space, seconds. Look how gorgeous that is. So congratulations, you have a fully functioning game and it is amazing. If you are done and you love that, you can press stop and be done with me. If you want to get a little fancier, I will show you another trick and we can add on a power-up. So when the spaceship or the rocket hits a power-up, it can get more powerful. So if you want to stick around for that, keep watching. If you're done, press stop and go play your game. So what we have, and you may not have noticed that there is a little sun that kind of flies around out there. That is our power-up, and right now he does absolutely nothing. But the good news is that in his brain, that little power-up, whenever that power-up touches the spaceship, it will send this secret message and say, hey, somebody turn your shield on. So what we want to do is we want our spaceship to be invincible, kind of like Mario when he touches a star, right, for just a little bit. So make sure that you click on the spaceship's brain, and then below that code that we wrote a minute ago, the spaceship is ready to respond to that secret message, turn your shield on, right? Now we just have to tell him what to do when he hears that message. Well, a shield is really just another variable because we need to remember, is our shield on or is our shield off? So let's come over to variables, and we're going to make yet another variable, and we will call it shield. So think about it like a force field, makes you invincible for just a little bit. Now the weird thing about this variable, that time could be any number ever. Like right now, 6 is in that time variable, right? Sometimes you might have a 2 or a 3 or a 37 in time. In shield, we are going to cheat, and we are only ever going to put either a 0 or a 1 in that bucket. And that's going to be our secret code to ourselves. 0 means my shield is off, and 1 means my shield is on, and those are the only two things that I will ever put in there. So what we want to do is, once I receive this message that my shield should turn on, I'm going to say set, I'm not going to use change, set my shield to be 1. So I don't care what was in it before, we're going to toss out whatever it was and make it 1. Now that is exciting, but you don't really see that on the actual rocket. So what we need to do is do something visual with the rocket. So if you wanted to make him flash, we could make him change color. We could do all sorts of different things with that rocket ship. I will point out that he actually has 2 different costumes. One kind of has a force field and the other one does not. So what I will say is I kind of need to do 2 things. I need to remember that my shield is on, and I'm going to go to looks, and I'm going to change my clothes. And so this way it will look like I have a shield. Now when you run this game, the power-up doesn't show up for like 5 seconds, so you may have to be patient. I switched my code so it shows up immediately. Now look at that. Now the only problem is that shield, now I'm a cheater because the shield is on forever and will never go away. So what I will say is I need to eventually turn this off and kind of undo these things. But notice my shield went from a 0 to a 1, and I'm going to go wait, And how long should your shield stay on? I don't know. Depends on how good you are at this game. I'm going to say 3 seconds. So the shield, I remember my shield is on. I show that I have a force field on. I wait 3 seconds, and then I need to undo those things. So what I will say is, let's go to my looks, and I will switch my costume back to normal or no shield after those 3 seconds. And don't forget that you want to change that variable. And remember, it's either 1 for on or 0 for off. So pause the video, be sure you have that code, and it is amazing. And then let's test it out. Oops, timeout. One thing I forgot. I'm a bad programmer because I forgot this. We were working on turning our shield on, which is amazing, but when we start the game, we need to make sure that we're not cheating, and we need to be sure that our shield is turned off. So scroll back up here. When we start the game, just like we made sure that the timer went to 0, we also need to be sure that my shield gets set to 0, so I start without a shield. Otherwise, I'm a cheater. So sorry about that. Make sure you get that little set right in there as well. Now, if you want, you can spice this up by changing the color, playing a sound, changing the color over and over again. So you can spice up your animation here, but be sure you have this basic setup, and then we're going to test your code to make sure it works. So again, let's test this out. My power-up shows up immediately. Yours may not show up for a few seconds. I've also changed my timer to go up by 0.1 seconds. And watch this. So there's an example of being really fancy. You can do color effects and all sorts of stuff. Eventually my shield goes away. Now here's the bad news. My shield really doesn't do anything right now, because even with my shield on, this alien is still going to kill me. That's no bueno. That should have protected me from the alien, but we will fix that. So right now my timer just says keep timing until you touch that alien, but now we have something else that's going on. Now we have to make sure you're touching the alien, and we're worried about your shield. So don't forget that this is kind of like your stop sign, why the game should stop. Well, now just touching the alien isn't enough to kill you. So we need 2 different things to happen together. We need to touch the alien, and we need to make sure your shield is off. So here we go. Let's go over to green, and we will grab this and block. And just means these 2 things have to happen together. Kind of like when your parents said you can't go to the movies unless you clean your room and mowed the yard, right? Don't come to them and say, I cleaned my room, can I go to the movies now? No, you're gonna do both or they're gonna be angry at you. So we need 2 things to happen together for the game to end. We need to touch the alien, and we need your shield to be off. And now this is why we have this little variable to know, right? This means look in this bucket and tell me about my shield. The only problem is that won't fit in there because the shield is just a number, right? So I need to know what that number should be. So here we go. Come back to your operators, and we are going to say, now that shield will never be 50, right? Because shield will only ever have a 0 or a 1, and we have a secret code for ourselves. So we will say shield equals 0, and that means shield is off. And when you pick this up, make sure you kind of put the corner of it there in that hole. It will snap into there. And now we're saying touching the alien with your shield off, and that's a long piece of code. Let's pick that up and put the left corner of it kind of in that spot. And now you have something beautiful. So pause if you need to catch up. That's a lot of code right there. Be sure you have that new and condition. Use some decimals here in your timer. And then let's see if your code works. Now we need to check 2 different things. What happens when I hit the alien with my shield off, and what happens when I hit it with my shield on. So here we go. I'm going to drive straight for the alien. That was awesome. That's exactly what should have happened. I hit him with the shield off, and the game is over. Now, we also have to see if our shield works. So this is a little harder. I have to pick up that shield. That was awesome. I could run over the alien. And then when I hit him with the shield off, the game is over. So congratulations, you have made a super complicated game with a timer and a power-up. As always, play with that game now, add some colors, change the sounds, do whatever you want to make that game more your own, and have fun.